guys, and welcome back to my channel. Alright, today, I'm doing it. We're gonna review Clown in a Cornfield 3, The Church of Frendo by Adam Cesare. Before I dive into this, two things to note. The buzzing sound in the background, that is my AC. I know a couple of people have commented on that. That'll be gone soon. Once all of the weather kind of chills out a little bit in the fall, I won't need my AC. Sorry about that. Two, I am pre-filming a lot of videos. I'm going to be going on an extended vacation. I'm going to be out of town for like 3 weeks basically, so that is why you will see this exact outfit in a later video. But let's talk about Clown in a Cornfield 3, The Church of Frendo. I'm going to do some spoilers at the end of this, just because I feel like I need to talk about them. This this overall review will contain spoilers probably for books 1 and 2. So if you haven't read those, maybe wait until you've read those to watch this, or be warned that I will have spoilers about books 1 and 2 because I really want to dive into the whole bones of book 3. Yeah, but spoilers will be at the end for this book itself. So let's talk about Clown in a Cornfield. If you've been on my channel for a while, like since its very beginning, you know I love the original Clown in a Cornfield. I think that book is fantastic. It was my favorite book of 2020, I believe. This whole series is marketed as YA for some reason. I've never once thought that this book was YA. It literally has teen characters as our leads, which I think is why the series gets a YA mark. But it's very gory, they're slashery, they're very messed up topics in here that I just don't buy as being a YA book. So I'm not really sure what the deal is with that. I've never once felt like this was a YA novel. Just feels very slashery, at least in the beginning. So loved book 1, read it in literally like 2 sittings. I thought it was fantastic. Again, kids in a cornfield getting slashed up by clowns. Great. Ends on that cliffhanger of Arthur Hill getting away. You're like, oh, what's gonna happen? Are we gonna get, you know, a great slasher part 2, you know, and start a franchise like you have with Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, Friday the 13th. That's where I thought this series was going. Book 2 is a huge disappointment to me. A lot of the slasheriness was gone, and instead was a lot of political commentary from Adam Cesare that didn't work for me because it wasn't really a commentary. It was literally just taking January 6th, putting those people in clown masks, and recreating basically what happened there. But instead of happening in DC, it's happening in Kettle Springs, Missouri. And I didn't like that. I also really didn't like the kind of character development that went into Quinn and Rust and Cole. I just found myself not really caring about any of the main characters. I found some of the side characters to be far more interesting than our leads. And I was just really, really, really let down by the overall tone shift of the series with book 2. However, I wanted to give the series one more shot because the first one really made me so happy, and I was really hoping that with book 3, Adam Cesare would kind of go back to book 1. And it wasn't as politically driven. It wasn't a basic regurgitation of modern day politics and the social climate of today in America, but it still had quite a lot of that in there. Now, some people might love that, and I think that authors should be able to talk about their political views in their work. My problem is I read horror for escapism, and so I don't love being reminded of like what's actually going on in today's world when I'm reading a book about clowns killing people in cornfields. And I think the tonal shift too of the first one being so fun and so campy and so just like great 80s horror fun, it felt like this second book was written for a completely different audience. And I didn't appreciate that. But I will say, I did like this far more than book 2. It's very gory. It's very gory. I was actually stunned at how gory some of this book was. But there are no cornfields. And the book has this like actual like self-awareness moment where they're like, we're aware there's no cornfields here. And I didn't love that. it's a completely different setting from books 1 and 2. Books 1 and 2 both, for the most part, take place in Kettle Springs, Missouri. We get something very different in this one, but we also get a very, very different Quinn. Quinn, I assume, is like 18 or 19 in this book, but she's kind of acting like Jamie Lee Curtis in the rebooted Halloween series, like Halloween 2018 and Halloween Ends and Halloween Kills. And I just didn't buy how she went from like senior in high school to this like warpath, vengeful killing machine, who has like a crazy amount of knowledge of like survival and weaponry and all of this crazy stuff. And it just felt so like out of nowhere. Like it needed to have been far more years removed from the second book for this to have made sense, because it just didn't work for me. I didn't buy her as a character. I didn't like her as a character. And for the most part, she's the only character that's really relevant from the entire rest of the series. Like there's Rust and Cole and her dad are kind of in it literally for like a chapter here and there. But other than that, it's not about them at all. We have different main characters in this. And I will say that the newly introduced characters of Tabitha and Johnny D, I really, really liked. I really liked them. I thought it was really interesting how they were introduced, why they were introduced, and what they were utilized for. I did find Johnny D and Quinn's kind of relationship weird, especially because Johnny D is like 17 and Quinn is maybe 19, 20. Like, they're kind of like weird. Is it a romance? Are they a love interest? Are they not? It was kind of weird for me. I didn't love it. And the villain I thought was interesting. I thought this particular group of clowns was definitely the most original that we've seen from Adam Cesare. But again, it kind of missed that mark of having just that campy, fun slasher moment. Like, this really wasn't a slasher. There's a lot of gore in this, but it wasn't like a fun, campy read. It was very intense, very sad at times, very brutal, and still had a lot of political undertones to it. This whole book is going to be focusing on religious fanaticism and cults for the most part. There's a lot of inspiration drawn from like Jamestown, Waco, so you have to definitely be aware of that going into this. One of the things that I really did love is, I think it's a really unique thing to have, and this is, you know, I'm going to save this for the spoiler section. But I found Tabitha's background to be really interesting. And when you paralleled that with the background of Johnny D, I also really loved that, because we're looking at two different people from two different backgrounds who have probably very, very, very opposing viewpoints. But I liked seeing them on the same side. And I think that was one of the things that did really, really well for Clown in a Cornfield. But what I will say that's not really a spoiler is Johnny D is a juggalo, which is so funny when you think about like a book all about clowns. It's taken this long to have the juggalos brought into here. I loved him. I thought he was so well done. He was so cute. He was so funny. And then you have Tabitha, who is an extremely devout, religious character, and very strong, very set in her ways, and like just a very good example of somebody who is very invested in religion, but does so for the right reasons. Because a lot of the Church of Frendo you're going to see is people invested in religion for the wrong reasons, and using that religion to kind of further their very evil agenda. And I really loved the juxtaposition of those three dichotomies in this book, and I thought the language around that and the way that Adam Cesare wrote those characters was really, really strong. However, I don't love how this book concluded. It's this really interesting parallel. You have like Tabitha's storyline is kind of one, and then you have Quinn and Johnny D's kind of adventures to getting to the Church of Frendo as another. And it all lines up very, very nicely and whatnot, but I just didn't feel like the ending was the payoff that I wanted. Primarily because by the end of it, I just found myself not caring at all about Quinn and really focused on all of the side characters instead. And I wasn't sure reading this if there was going to be a book 4 or not. Apparently there will be a book 4, even though I feel like this could have ended with book 3 and it would have been a fine conclusion to this. But yeah, the political undertones were still very much there, but they weren't as blatant of a copy and paste of real life. They were definitely more nods to real events that have happened, kind of thrown into one big amalgamation that did in fact make it very, very scary. So I'm going to start here for the spoilers. So if you want to keep watching, spoilers are about to start. But I want to talk about Tabitha. I figured out pretty quickly that part of the twist of this novel was going to be that Tabitha wasn't actually like a settler from, like, I don't know, like when they were settling the West or whatnot, and that this Kettle Springs wasn't the one in Missouri. I figured out pretty quickly that she was probably Amish. I'm not 100% sure what her actual religion was, but it is one similar to Amish. She says she's not Amish, but I don't know if it's because she's been like kind of coaxed into the Church of Frendo, or if she is something else like Mennonite. And I don't have enough of a background in these different religions to really know enough about them to figure out what she was, but I loved that twist. I thought that was really well done. I loved the twist as you're seeing her understanding exactly what's happening. I thought she was a really cool character, and I thought this was a really unique angle to take, and I really loved reading about her storyline and kind of the horrors that this Church of Frendo has put upon her, primarily because we have like one of those like televangelists who realized they couldn't kind of convince everybody to join his philosophy through what he was doing, so he exploited these kind of online fanatics of Frendo's following to make and create his own church. I thought the big reveal of who the pastor was horrifying. I thought that the entirety of what the host was, with those like nods to a little bit of spore, mushroom horror, it was really creepy. I found Arthur Hill's body to be so disturbing. We get those nods to Leatherface there too with the pastor, which I thought was very, very well done. And when his whole conclusion happens too, we also get a huge nod to The Wicker Man / Midsummer, which I also thought was very, very well done. But I found myself caring primarily about reading about the cult more so than anything that had to do with Quinn, and she's our main character. In fact, every time I had to read about Quinn, the only thing I cared about was Johnny D. I thought Johnny D was a great character. I thought his story was really tragic. I thought his whole adventure with Quinn was really unique and well done, which is why when he dies, this kind of just out of nowhere death after trying really hard to assist Quinn, it didn't work for me. I really needed her to have been the one to get taken out, and then we could have Johnny D and Tabitha be our characters going forward if we're going to continue the series. But taking Johnny D out, especially after all of the things that happened to him and his family, didn't work for me. And it was such an anticlimactic death scene too that I was just like, I read so much about this character who was just introduced to me, and I've fallen so in love with him as a character, and we're just going to take him out of nowhere. And he didn't deserve that. Quinn really had gone too far. There was no going back home for Quinn. I think that was very well established. But instead we end the book on this cliffhanger of like, they've never found her body, and does she escape the pyre? Which, like, I don't think she did. But I'm sure because this is a slasher series that's going to keep going, she will be back in some way or shape or another. But I wish it was Johnny instead, because I loved him. He was so funny and charismatic, and he really just didn't get his moment to shine at the end before his light was taken out. So I really, really didn't love that. And that was the problem that I had with this book, is I just constantly would roll my eyes every time Quinn was this character, and she just no longer felt like the Quinn from the first book. But I just don't believe that these 2 years changed her that much. And she really does kind of become this evil character. And I wonder if that was what Adam Cesare was trying to say, is that, like, the being in Frendo's world really does corrupt you. Like, you look at Rust and Cole, and Mayor Maybrook, and you can see how they were able to kind of remove themselves from it and be able to carry on their lives, but Quinn never let it go, and it really just kind of corrupts her as well. But that's why I think that her ending needs to be more final and not open-ended. I would have much rather have Johnny's ending be open-ended with the idea that he could come back. I think that would have been so much better. Another thing that I had a little bit of an issue with is this book really didn't want to remind me of who certain characters were. It took me forever to figure out who Vivian was and who Janet was, just because I read the original book almost 4 years ago at this point. So that was just something for me where I was just like, oh man, like, we're referencing people from book 1. Like, I really need to refresh my memory on this. And I just wish that he had done a little bit better of a job with that. And he's also kind of referencing the latest Scream installment, because Quinn is constantly seeing Arthur Hill's, like, ghost that's really just her subconscious, which was very much like a nod to, like, Billy Loomis in, like, the Scream 6, 7, 6? I think it's 6. And so I just, I don't know. I gave this book a 4 stars, because I did think it was better than book 2, still very much weaker than book 1. And I just want it to go back to campy, fun slasher stories. And we really kind of had that moment where we had Johnny D as a character, because I think he really did uphold the humor in the story. And again, I loved his juxtaposition with Tabitha, who's being, like, this just amazing, devout, religious girl questioning these lies that are being told before her as everything that she knows is, like, blowing up in her face. I loved their storylines, but I just didn't love that everything was glued together with Quinn's revenge story, and it didn't work for me. Also, there weren't enough, like, friendos. Like, come on, bring back, like, clown people. I didn't love the idea of these kind of being, like, homemade masks instead of, like, the original Frendo mask. Like, I get the imagery. I think it was kind of cool and scary, but I just needed a little bit more. And I just don't buy Quinn, like, going around the country torturing clown people, just because she feels angry about it. Like, this just didn't make sense. She doesn't feel like a hero to me. Especially the fact that she was going to go after Johnny D's older brother, who, it's very explicitly stated in the beginning when we first meet Johnny D that his brother never actually went through with it. He got stopped. Before anything blew up and escalated to the heights that it did in book 2. So I was just really confused by that. I did like Colby and Taylor are kind of evil Mormons in disguise. I kind of loved the whole hiding behind religion commentary to be these, like, violent, awful people, and using, like, being religious, devout characters as their disguise. I thought that was an interesting commentary that Adam Cesare was opening up, and they really were evil, and I really did enjoy their storylines and their ending, their conclusion. It felt very, very earned, and so I thought that was great and really well thought out. But again, when the focus was mainly on Quinn, I would just kind of roll my eyes. So I'm interested to see what happens in book 4. Hopefully Tabitha will be another character that we really resonate with for book 4. I really just wish Johnny D took over the franchise afterwards, because I just don't think I can keep reading about Quinn. I just don't love her as a character, especially the way that they have changed her so much in this book. It did feel very much similar to Jade Daniels in book 3 of the Indian Lake trilogy by Stephen Graham Jones, where I just felt like I no longer recognized that character because she had been changed so much to fit the plot line that the author was writing. So that was my issue. But 4 stars because I really did enjoy everything else. This is a long one. It's almost like 450 pages, but I read it over the course of like 3 or 4 days. I was reading like 100 pages a day. So I definitely enjoyed reading this more than book 2. I'll see where book 4 takes us, but I don't know. I don't really have high hopes. So let's just leave it at that. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, I try to post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays. And if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you all in the next one. Mwah.